The disappearance of street Carlo Acutis' relic in western Venezuela came like a wound to the heart of the faithful. Just days earlier, the world had witnessed a historic moment in St. Peter's Square, where Pope Leo XIV declared Carlo Acutis the first millennial saint. More than 80 pilgrims had gathered, and millions across the globe had been inspired by the story of the teenage computer genius who devoted his short life to the Eucharist. Yet, within 48 hours, a chilling development struck. The small circular cloth relic, safeguarded in a reliquary at the Santo Domingo de Guzman parish, was gone. To outsiders, it might seem like a theft of little value, just a piece of fabric. But to Catholics, the theft represented far more than a burglary. It was the desecration of a holy connection, a violent severing of spiritual trust, and a dark omen hinting that something unseen was already moving against the Church. For centuries, relics have been revered as tangible reminders of God's grace and the sanctity of His chosen servants. To believers, they are sacred bridges between heaven and earth. To Satan and his servants, however, they are targets, powerful symbols to defile, desecrate, and weaponize. It is no accident that this theft occurred at the very dawn of Acutis' sainthood, when devotion to him was surging worldwide, especially among young Catholics. By striking now, the enemy has planted seeds of fear and confusion, whispering doubts. If the relic of a newly canonized saint can vanish from the altar, what else might be vulnerable? In the days that followed, parishioners in Merida wept and prayed, holding vigils by candlelight, pleading for the return of what was lost. The San Carlo Acutis youth group, who had requested the relic years earlier after his beatification, felt devastated, betrayed even. Yet their grief was not only for the missing cloth, it was for what the theft symbolized, a sign that forces of darkness, whether through human greed or satanic influence, had intruded upon sacred ground. What began as a theft of fabric now loomed as a potential spiritual battle, echoing with the haunting possibility that Satan himself had reached into their parish, seizing not only a relic, but attempting to rob the faithful of their hope. To many modern eyes, the theft of a relic may seem trivial. After all, what worth could a small piece of cloth hold in a world driven by money, politics, and material possessions? Yet, in the unseen realm, relics are priceless, not because of the fabric itself, but because of the spiritual imprint it carries. A relic, even a third-class one, has been sanctified by its contact with a saint, and through that connection, it radiates the holiness of the person's life. Street? Carlo Acutis' relic was not a random token. It symbolized a bridge to a young saint who dedicated his brief years to the Eucharist, purity, and evangelization. For the faithful, it is a reminder of hope, but for the forces of darkness, it is a threat. A glowing ember of divine light that must be extinguished. This is why such relics are coveted in the shadowy world of occult practices. Black masses, satanic rituals, and dark ceremonies often seek to twist the sacred into something profane. When relics are stolen, they are not merely hoarded, they are desecrated. History has shown that witches and occultists will invert Christian symbols, using them in ceremonies to mock Christ, to summon demonic presences, or to attempt to bind the power of saints for their own purposes. A relic like Acutis's, newly charged with the energy of millions of prayers surrounding his canonization, becomes an especially potent target. The devil delights not only in stealing what is holy, but in corrupting it. Imagine the implications. A piece of cloth touched to a saint becomes a tool in the hands of those who hate God. Instead of inspiring conversions, it could be used in curses meant to spread despair. Instead of fostering devotion among youth, it could be dragged into a circle of blood, chanted over, and invoked to summon unclean spirits. The Church has long warned that simony, the buying and selling of relics, is a grave sin, but far darker than commerce is sacrilege. When the sacred is placed in hands that belong to Satan, it ceases to function as a beacon of grace and risks being weaponized against the innocent. Thus, the theft of Carlo's relic is not just a violation of a parish, it is potentially the opening of a gateway. If this relic is not recovered, its absence may fuel forces that thrive on mockery, corruption, and inversion of the holy. For the faithful, this theft is a warning. The enemy has recognized the spiritual power of street Carlo Acutis, and it is determined to strip that power away from the youth, who look to him as a guide. Throughout Christian history, relics have not only been venerated by the faithful, but also hunted by those who seek to pervert their power. The Church teaches that relics carry no magical properties in themselves. Rather, they serve as reminders of holiness and as vessels through which God may grant grace. Yet, in the twisted perception of occultists and servants of darkness, these same relics become tools to breach the barrier between the natural and the supernatural. By desecrating them, they attempt to invert their sacred purpose. A relic, when stolen, is vulnerable to being turned into a gateway, an object used not to glorify God, but to invite demonic influence. Satan's greatest weapon has always been inversion. Where God gives light, Satan offers shadows. Where the Church places relics in golden reliquaries beneath altars, the enemy drags them into secret chambers lit with black candles. Where prayers of intercession are whispered by the faithful, chants of summoning are shouted in defiance of heaven. This is the chilling possibility with Street. Carlo Acutis' missing relic, that it may now be at the center of unholy rites, being used to mock his holiness, or worse, to open channels for demonic forces to act more powerfully on earth. One must remember that the saints, even in their relics, embody purity and resistance against sin. To steal their relics is to strike at these very virtues. When the relic of Acutis is used in a ritual, it is not just an attack on a piece of cloth, it is an assault on the youth he represents, the Church's future, and the Eucharistic devotion that he lived and died proclaiming. Satan seeks to turn the relic into a corrupted symbol, reversing its power, transforming a beacon of faith into a tool of despair. There are chilling accounts, whispered through centuries, of stolen relics used in satanic pacts, curses, and even attempts to summon legions of spirits. In these rituals, the desecration is meant to mock God directly, a symbolic slap in the face of heaven. Now, as Venezuela mourns the disappearance of Acutis' relic, we must ask, what unholy purpose is being plotted in the shadows? Could this theft mark not just the loss of a sacred item, but the opening of a new battlefield in the spiritual war that rages unseen all around us? At the heart of Satan's rebellion lies one twisted desire: to mock what is holy. From the earliest days of the Church, every act of desecration, whether it was pagan idols placed in temples, sacred books burned in public squares, or altars defiled, has carried the same venomous intention. Evil does not create, it corrupts. It cannot build sanctity, so it seeks instead to ridicule it, to stain it, and to turn it into a parody of itself. This is the frightening danger with the relic of Street. Carlo Acutis. In the hands of those devoted to darkness, its greatest use is not simply as a mystical object, but as a weapon of mockery against the holiness it represents. Consider what a relic means to the faithful: a touchpoint with heaven, a reminder of purity, a link to a saint who lived for Christ. Now imagine that same relic laid on a table, not in a parish, but in a hidden chamber of occultists, surrounded by symbols of inversion, a crucifix turned upside down, prayers recited backwards, invocations not to God but to demons. The relic becomes a target, not because of what it can do magically, but because of what it symbolizes. To profane it is to spit on the memory of Carlo's life, to try and desecrate his witness of faith, and to send a message to the Church: even your brightest young saints are not beyond our reach. This form of spiritual warfare is insidious. The faithful find inspiration in relics because they represent God's triumph over death, the victory of holiness even in a fallen world. But Satan delights in dragging these reminders of victory into the dirt, parading them as trophies. Every act of mockery is designed to erode confidence, to plant despair, to whisper into the ears of believers: your saints cannot protect you. Even their relics are mine. And for those already steeped in occult practices, such a relic is paraded as a prize, proof that darkness has invaded the sanctuary of light. Yet it is precisely here that the true battle begins. Desecration does not weaken God, he is unassailable, but it can shake the faith of men and women, especially the young, whose devotion to Street, Carlo Acutis, is only just beginning to bloom. This is why the theft is so devastating, because Satan knows that corrupting symbols often wounds the flock more than any open attack. By desecrating a relic, he seeks to desecrate the spirit of those who revere it, leaving them questioning God's protection and uncertain of their own strength. When sacred objects fall into the grasp of occultists, they are rarely kept as trophies alone. History and spiritual tradition reveal that desecrated relics often become central elements in sinister ceremonies. Occult practitioners believe that holy relics, infused with the prayers of the faithful, can act as conduits bridges into realms they were never meant to reach. By twisting prayers into curses and sacraments into blasphemy, they attempt to bend the holy into fuel for their own dark invocations. Street Carlo Acutis' relic, stolen so soon after his canonization, is particularly dangerous in this regard. His relic is not centuries old, shrouded in distant history. It belongs to a saint whose story still burns brightly in the hearts of the young, a saint who died only in 2006, who coded websites and played soccer, who used technology for evangelization. This modern connection makes his relic uniquely powerful as a spiritual beacon. Now imagine it in the hands of a coven, a cult, or even individuals dabbling in satanic rites. They may attempt to summon demons by desecrating it, mocking the Eucharist that Carlo so loved, and chanting incantations not for healing but for destruction. In such ceremonies, relics are often placed at the center of inverted altars. Where the church would enshrine them with candles and incense, the occult surrounds them with blood, fire, and blasphemy. They are used in rituals that attempt to bind the spirit of the saint, not to venerate, but to mock, to twist their witness into something profane. The danger is not that the saint can be controlled, Carlo rests safely in God's presence, but that the demons invoked through the ritual may feed upon the desecration itself. Each act of sacrilege is like a signal flare, drawing unclean spirits closer, giving them a foothold in the world of men. What terrifies the faithful most is the ripple effect of such actions. A desecrated relic does not simply remain a hidden curse. Its influence, once unleashed, can spread into the surrounding community. Paranormal disturbances, unexplainable violence, despair gripping the youth. These are often cited in places where relics have been profaned. If this stolen relic of Acutis has indeed been dragged into occult hands, Venezuela may not only face the sorrow of a lost holy object, but the spiritual fallout of unholy forces unleashed in its absence. The desecration of a relic is never confined to the shadows where it occurs. The spiritual disturbance it unleashes can radiate outward, seeping into families, communities, and even nations. For centuries, Christians have recorded uncanny outbreaks following the theft or profanation of relics, episodes of violence, strange illnesses, plagues of despair, or sudden moral collapse spreading through regions once grounded in faith. These disturbances are not always visible to the untrained eye. They often manifest as subtle erosion of spiritual resilience, a corrosion of the human heart. When a relic like that of Street Carlo Acutis is stolen, it is not merely a cloth that has been taken, it is a symbol of hope ripped away from a people who look to him as an intercessor for youth, technology, and a renewed devotion to the Eucharist. In Venezuela, where hardship already presses heavily on the population, the disappearance of this relic could open wounds that demonic forces eagerly exploit. Fear and suspicion may fester among parishioners. Faith, shaken by the thought that even sacred treasures are vulnerable, may begin to wane. And beyond the borders of that parish, the effects can spiral further. Street Carlo's witness has inspired young people across the globe. If his relic becomes a weapon of desecration, Satan could twist that inspiration into doubt, leaving many to wonder if holiness itself can be protected in a world full of corruption and theft. The Church warns that when sacred things are mocked, the demonic gains strength not by weakening heaven, but by weakening us. Heaven cannot be diminished, but mankind's trust in heaven can. This is the true danger of spiritual fallout, that despair spreads faster than faith, that young hearts who should be emboldened by Carlo's story instead feel abandoned, and that communities already burdened with suffering succumb to hopelessness. In this sense, the theft of one relic could ripple across continents, undermining the Church's mission and granting darkness a foothold in the very souls of the faithful. This is why the prayers for the relic's return are not just about recovering a cloth. They are pleas to God to close the door that Satan is trying to force open, to halt the spread of corruption before it seeps deeper into the hearts of men. Without intervention through prayer, penance, and the power of Christ's name, the theft could mark the beginning of a broader assault, one designed not to destroy the Church from without, but to corrode it from within. Every saint has a mission that echoes beyond their death, and Street Carlo Acutis' mission is unmistakable: to inspire the young to love Christ in the Eucharist and to use technology for good. This is precisely why his relic was targeted. Satan knows that the greatest threat to his kingdom of despair is not the weak, but the rising generation of believers, armed with faith and courage. By stealing the relic of Carlo, the Church's first millennial saint, dark forces strike directly at the heart of youth evangelization, seeking to extinguish the flame before it spreads further across the world. Carlo's story resonates so deeply because he was one of them. A teenager who loved soccer, video games, and computers, yet who refused to waste his life on emptiness. He built websites cataloging Eucharistic miracles, used technology to draw people closer to Christ, and lived with a joy that showed holiness is not reserved for priests or cloistered monks, but possible for every young person. In a world where countless youth drift toward nihilism, addiction, and despair, Carlo became a radiant example that sanctity is attainable, even in the 21st century. To Satan, such a witness is intolerable. By profaning Carlo's relic, the enemy seeks to distort his memory. To the youth who pray for him, the theft may plant questions. If God allowed this, is he truly protecting us? To those still searching, it may seem like a sign that even holiness cannot withstand the corruption of this world. To those tempted by the occult, it may even appear as if Satan has triumphed over the Church's newest saint. This is the psychological and spiritual battlefield, one where a single stolen relic becomes a spear aimed at the hearts of millions of young Catholics who see themselves reflected in Carlo's life. The danger is that despair spreads faster than hope when faith is shaken. If young Catholics believe that their saints cannot protect even their relics, then their trust in intercession weakens. If they fall into fear, Satan wins ground. But the enemy's strategy is not complete unless the relic is used to sow confusion worldwide, turning Carlo's very witness into a stage for ridicule. This is why the theft is not a simple crime. It is an assault on the future of the Church, an attempt to strip the next generation of its hope and to bind it instead in chains of doubt, cynicism, and spiritual paralysis. The theft of Street Carlo Acutis' relic is more than a local tragedy, it is a signpost pointing to the wider battlefield of our age. For centuries, relics have been reminders that holiness transcends death, that saints walk beside us even now, interceding and strengthening the faithful. By stealing and desecrating such a relic, the forces of darkness are not simply mocking one saint, they are declaring open war on holiness itself. It is an act designed to tell the world that nothing sacred is safe, that even in the heart of the Church, evil can creep in and corrupt. But this is precisely the lie Satan wants humanity to believe. The reality is different. The saints, safe in the glory of heaven, cannot be harmed by what is done to their relics. Carlo Acutis remains a blazing light in the presence of God, untouchable by satanic rage. Yet the relic is still crucial, for it carries meaning to us, the living. Its theft threatens not heaven, but earth. It is our faith, our hope, and our resolve that are tested. This is the true battlefield, not the cloth that was stolen, but the souls of the faithful who must now decide whether to give in to despair or to rise in deeper prayer and vigilance. Evil thrives on desecration, but only if the faithful allow mockery to become stronger than devotion. If the relic is turned into a tool of darkness, used in occult rites, then it may unleash disturbances, confusion, and despair. But if the Church responds with prayer, fasting, and reparation, then Satan's victory will crumble into dust, and the theft will become instead a testimony of endurance, a moment that strengthens faith rather than weakens it. For every relic desecrated, countless more hearts can become living relics, temples of God, shining brighter than any piece of cloth. The story of Carlo Acutis does not end with a missing relic. His life was already a weapon against Satan, and his witness cannot be erased by theft. If anything, the theft reveals how deeply the enemy fears him. For a 15-year-old boy who loved the Eucharist and built websites for God to be targeted even after death shows the enduring power of holiness. The faithful must see this act not as a defeat, but as a summons to rise in prayer, to guard the treasures of the Church, and to live as Carlo lived, pure, joyful, and devoted to Christ above all. And so, the relic may be missing, hidden in the shadows, where dark hands seek to corrupt it, but its light is not extinguished. The battle is not lost. Rather, it has only revealed itself more clearly. A war between heaven and hell, fought not with swords and guns, but with faith, hope, and love. In this war, every soul counts. And every act of devotion, every prayer uttered in the name of Street Carlo Acutis, strikes back against the mockery of Satan, proving that holiness cannot be stolen, it can only be multiplied.